And let's talk about today's business matters. More travel headaches piling up in New Jersey. Newark Liberty International Airport warned that travelers on social media about possible delays and cancellations. In a post on X, the airport explained that this is due to FAA staffing issues and construction. So yesterday, more than 500 flights were delayed and more than 200 canceled. Data on a flight to where for today shows at least 200 have already been delayed and about 20 canceled. Maker of the popular weight loss drug Zepbound said it would help respond with national security concerns around cheaper essential medications. Eli Lilly CEO Dave Ricks said bringing back that capacity in case of emergency is valid. And at the same time, Ricks is calling on the Trump administration to ease up on a broader tariff rollout expected to hit the pharmaceutical industry. Ricks said he does not believe tariffs are the right move to boost drug manufacturing in the U.S. Instead, he believes it's tax incentives and cuts. A federal judge warns that artificial intelligence could obliterate the market for original works. He expressed this concern as the first court hearing gets underway in a case against Meta. The company is accused of pirating copyrighted work without permission or compensation to train its Llama large language model. Meta is making the argument that this is fair use since the AI systems study the copyrighted material and then create new transformative content. As current tariffs stand, Apple anticipates a hit of $900 million next quarter. The tech giant is responding by shifting its global supply chain. This includes most of its iPhones set for the U.S., moving production out of China. Here's more.
Apple is shifting its sourcing strategy in response to trade tensions between the U.S. and China. For years, Apple has relied heavily on China to make its iPhones. Now, CEO Tim Cook says the majority of its smartphones sold in the U.S. will come from India. Other products bound for the U.S., like iPads and Macs, will come mostly from Vietnam. And there's another shift Apple is making in its global supply chain. The tech firm plans to source more than 19 billion chips from the U.S. this year. For advanced processors, Apple plans to lean heavily on new facilities in Arizona, owned by Taiwan chipmaker TSMC. This is all on top of a pledge from Apple to invest $500 billion in the U.S. over the next 4 years. Apple also shared its first quarter results. Revenue rose to $95 billion, up from the same time last year. But the tech firm warned that if current global tariff rates and policies hold, Apple estimates it could cost the company $900 million next quarter.
Another solid month for employment gains. April turned out a stronger than expected jobs report. The Bureau of Labor Statistics found 177,000 jobs were added to the U.S. economy. April's top job creator was the private education and health services sector, followed by the transportation and warehouse industry. Areas that lost jobs include the federal government, retailers, and manufacturers. At the same time, the employment rate held steady at a historical low, unchanged just about 4%. But there were increases in the number of people receiving ongoing jobless benefits and those who have been out of work for more than 26 weeks and are still seeking employment. The Department of Justice is suing Hawaii, Michigan, New York, and Vermont. It's a preemptive attempt to stop them from suing fossil fuel companies over allegations of climate change. The DOJ lawsuits say the federal government has the sole authority to regulate greenhouse gases through the Clean Air Act. The lawsuits point to an executive order President Trump signed on his first day in office. It declared a national energy emergency and directed agencies to bolster fuel infrastructure. The lawsuits say Michigan and Hawaii would be getting in the way of the administration's work to boost the domestic energy supply. The DOJ also says lawsuits against fuel companies would result in higher energy prices nationwide. Michigan Attorney General Dana Nessel responded, saying she remains undeterred in her intention to file a lawsuit. Now, why did the U.S. economy contract last quarter? I discussed the topic of the latest GDP numbers with Michael Busler, a professor of finance at Stockton University and a public policy analyst. Tell us why you think the U.S. economy contracted last quarter. What reason would you attribute to it?
So thanks for having me. As you know, it's my pleasure to be here. So the economy did contract in the last quarter. It's not as bad as it may sound. Why do I say that? There are four sectors of the economy. Consumer spending, consumption accounts for about 70% of GDP. That was up by about 1.25% in this latest data. Business investment, the second sector, that was also up in the recent data. So what went down? Government spending, rather, which we're trying to reduce, that finally did go down a little bit, and that's somewhat of a drag on the economy. But the biggest reason is our imports skyrocketed. So when consumers spend money, if you're buying domestic goods, that adds to GDP. Consumers spend money and you're buying goods made out of the country, that subtracts from GDP. So consumers, maybe being fearful of tariffs finally coming into play, started to increase their consumption of foreign-made goods. And that was enough to turn the GDP number negative. If you take that out, the GDP number was positive.
So Trump was actually saying this yesterday, that the economy was still Biden's. What is your perspective on that?
Well, so Trump said, look, I didn't get into office until January 20th. I really couldn't do anything, and started doing things in February and announcing some things in March. So he's saying that much of what he has already done has not impacted the GDP numbers. On the other hand, the policies from the prior administration are still carrying forward. And that has, in his view, that's really what slowed down the economy. I think the reality is it's part of what's been left over from the Biden administration. When the economy, most of last year, was growing at 3%, then it slowed down to about 2.4% in the fourth quarter. It looked like it was going to get even slower in this quarter. And you take a look at that and add in some of the effects of Trump's policies and consumers looking to buy goods before the tariffs come into place. I think both of those contributed to the negative number, which I don't see negative in the future quarters.
Okay, so you were saying earlier that maybe we shouldn't be too worried of a recession, but since we already had one negative GDP number, if we do get another one next quarter, another negative GDP number, are we then technically in a recession?
So the old technical definition of recession was 2 successive quarters of negative growth in GDP. Now we have a bureau in the government that actually declares a recession. 1 year, I think 2022, we had negative GDP in the first and second quarter. It wasn't declared a recession because it was very small negative numbers, and then the economy turned around. So I don't see a recession coming. Even though the number of job openings has gone down, there are still more job openings than there are unemployed people. The unemployment rate, historically, if it's anywhere near 4%, that's considered a full employment level. Right now, it's at 4.1%. The number of layoffs the last couple of weeks has actually gone down. So it looks like fundamentally the economy is still strong. There's a lot of uncertainty. Business and consumers are not really sure what to do because first we're going to have tariffs and they're postponed, and then they say we have trade deals and we haven't had any yet. So there's a lot of uncertainty in the economy.
Well, all right, Michael, again, thank you very much for coming on today. It was good to see you.
Always my pleasure. Thank you.
The trade war between the U.S. and its partners is taking to the skies. Low-cost Irish airline Ryanair has threatened to reassess a $30 billion order with Boeing. This started when CEO Michael O'Leary said the airline would consider buying a plane made by Chinese company Comac if the price was right. In response, Democratic Congressman Raja Krishnamurti wrote O'Leary a letter saying that a purchase from Chinese military companies should not be a consideration. O'Leary wrote a message back saying the budget airline would reassess its current order with Boeing worth $30 billion if U.S. tariffs increased plane costs. He said Ryanair would consider an order with Comac if it was cheaper, but clarified that there is no discussion with Comac right now. Texas could soon have a new city. On Saturday, the nearly 300 registered voters who live in the area known as Starbase will vote on whether or not to incorporate and establish a small city government. Nearly all the voters are SpaceX employees because Starbase is the launch site location of Elon Musk's space company. Starbase has been around for about a decade, and Musk says he plans to expand its footprint, even potentially moving SpaceX's headquarters to the area. Critics of the vote say incorporating could allow SpaceX to skirt some regulations, but supporters say it will help ease the burden the area puts on the Cameron County. The vote is expected to pass. Now, if you shop online at Amazon Haul, Temu, or Shein, you might notice higher prices. That's because the de minimis tariff exemption for Chinese imports ended this morning. Here's more.
The era of Americans buying ultra-cheap products from China might be waning. As of this morning, a tariff loophole is closed for Chinese imports worth $800 or less. That's due to executive action from President Donald Trump last month.
It's a big scam going on against our country.
Here are the new tariffs for Chinese imports in the affected price range. An item sent via the postal system carries a 120% duty or a $100 fee. On June 1st, the flat cost option rises to $200. An item shipped another way likely faces Trump's 145% tariff hike.
Maybe the children will have $2 instead of $30, you know? And maybe the $2 will cost a couple of bucks more than they would normally.
Chinese e-commerce giants Shein and Temu say they raised prices a week ago to prepare for the loophole's end. Temu's website uses the label local warehouse for items it says aren't subject to duties.
Uber says it will deploy thousands of self-driving cars on its ride-hailing platform across U.S. cities. The company will partner with May Mobility, a self-driving technology startup. The initiative will begin in Arlington, Texas by the end of the year. Uber is competing with Lyft and EV maker Tesla in the robotic taxi market. May Mobility's robotic taxis will be operated by safety drivers before transitioning to fully autonomous operation. The federal government is promoting the deployment of self-driving vehicles. This is done by expanding exemptions from certain safety requirements while maintaining mandatory accident reporting. More Americans are using Buy Now, Pay Later loans, or BNPL, to buy everyday items. While these loans are not new, how people are using them is changing. Here's more.
Is a good way to get some things I either need or want, and to be able to manage my expenses in a way that also keeps me a little more fluid and flexible.
For the past year, Javon Frinks has taken advantage of the Buy Now, Pay Later loan service Affirm.
Even before you make the purchase, it tells you how much is each payment going to be, how often.
He's not alone. According to Bankrate economic analyst Sarah Foster, 2 in 5 Americans have used a Buy Now, Pay Later service.
We're seeing that even stress levels about just affording everyday expenses and saving for emergencies, those are rising.
A study by LendingTree found that a quarter of Buy Now, Pay Later users say they've used the loans to buy groceries. That's up from 14% just a year ago. Meanwhile, 2/3 say they'd consider using loans for food delivery. George Camel, a personal finance expert, warns these loans can be a slippery slope of overspending and debt accumulation.
You get hit with late fees, $7 per missed payment. You get hit with a crazy APR of up to 34% with Klarna if you miss these payments.
Both experts agree. These BNPL loans are here to stay.
It's scary to see the growth of these companies, and unfortunately, I don't think it's an option people are wanting to turn to.
The fact that prices are, threatening to increase again, it just really comes at a tough time for them.
Driverless semi-trucks are making their mark on highways in the Lone Star State. Autonomous trucking firm Aurora announced yesterday it has announced and launched commercial service in Texas. The self-driving trucks are doing regular long-haul routes between Dallas and Houston. The semis have computers and sensors that can see at a distance of more than 4 football fields. During the 4 years of practice hauls, the self-driving technology was able to complete over 1,200 miles without a human in the truck. Aurora is beginning with a single self-driving truck and plans to add more by the end of the year. TikTok has been fined $600 million for sending European user data to China. The EU privacy regulator said TikTok failed to show that data accessed by staff in China was afforded high levels of protection. NTD's international correspondent Malcolm Hudson has more for us from London.
The European Union's privacy regulators fined TikTok $600 million over concerns about how it protects user data, some of which can be accessed by staff in China. The regulator said TikTok failed to show that European user data was given protections required under EU law and did not address the potential use of this data by the Chinese regime. Ireland's Data Protection Commissioner, or DPC, which is leading the case, also ordered TikTok to suspend data transfers to China if its processing is not brought into compliance within 6 months. Under the EU's General Data Protection Regulation, the regulator can impose fines of up to 4% of global revenue. TikTok said it plans to appeal the ruling, and that it has used the EU's own legal framework to grant tightly controlled and limited remote access. The DPC said TikTok did not address how the Chinese Communist Party could potentially access European user data through Chinese anti-terrorism, counter-espionage and other laws. Laws TikTok has identified as materially diverging from EU standards. In 2023, the Irish regulator fined TikTok nearly $370 million in a separate investigation into child privacy. TikTok, whose parent company ByteDance is based in China, has been under scrutiny in Europe and the United States over how it handles users' personal information. Western officials fears it poses a security risk over user data sent to China. Last month, President Trump said a deal to sell TikTok to a non-Chinese company was still very much on the table. The future of TikTok in the United States has remained uncertain because of persistent national security concerns, particularly the Chinese Communist regime's ability to force ByteDance to hand over the massive amount of data it collects from TikTok users, or to manipulate the platform's sophisticated algorithm to change public opinion. These concerns stem in part from China's 2017 National Intelligence Law, which obligates Chinese companies to cooperate with state intelligence operations when asked. Malcolm Hudson, NTD News, London.
Secretary of Labor Lori Chavez de Remer says the latest jobs reports beat expectations for April. She says the report is a sign that confidence is going up and a result of investment in the workforce.
Well, we beat expectations, so this is an exciting day for the American worker. You know, we knocked it out of the park last month, and to beat expectations this month is great, not only for the American economy, but for all Americans. As I've kicked off my 50-state tour, it's been incredible to see the confidence go up, and as we see the American worker, manufacturing jobs go up, transportation jobs go up, construction jobs month over month. So this is good for the American economy. We want to make sure that we're having our workers skilled, reskilled, and trained up and ready to go. That's what we've heard during this America at Work tour. People want to know that they have a workforce ready to go, and as we see the manufacturing jobs come back with the investment of these companies. And listen, the executive order, 1 million new apprentices is what the president wants. That's what I want, and we're working hard to deliver on that as well so that that pipeline is also fueled and ready to go.
The Labor Secretary also says her reason for going on the road is to find out about market demand. She also says she wants to help U.S. businesses comply with the law and assist them in growing the economy. Okay, on to markets. Wall Street rallied today, capping a second week of gains. Markets also responded positively to news that Beijing is considering trade talks after President Trump's 145 tariff on Chinese goods. And his partial reversal of some tariffs helped boost stocks as well. While Apple fell after cutting its buyback program and warning of tariff-related costs, Chevron and ExxonMobil advanced on strong earnings. Overall, investors saw the economic data as a sign of resilience despite trade headwinds. That's it on today's Business Matters.